begin recording and live streaming. Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to the Lafayette Parish School System Community Resource Forum for Parents and Guardians of Leap Connect students. This is the high school session. My name is Ellen Castellanos. I'm one of the program specialists for the Department of Special Education here at the Lafayette Parish School System. I oversee programming for Leap Connect classes, which is the alternate assessment, the alternate to the LEAP test that general ed students take. The purpose of this meeting is to provide parents, guardians, and families with information about community resources that may be available to your children. The resources available in Lafayette are vast and varied. So the time that we have here today may not obviously be enough time to get an idea of the full breadth of what is available out there, but the goal is to provide you with valuable, impactful information so that when you go on from here, you have the contact information, you have phone numbers, and you have some faces to assign to those community agencies. This is our first effort, so thank you all for joining us, and those that are watching on online and those that watch the recording, thank you for that. The first thing I'd like to do, and I'll just talk about them a little bit, the people that are here. We have Nicole Flores. She's the director of Acadiana Families Helping Families. She is a tireless advocate for individuals with special needs in Lafayette and in the state. She participates in things, boards, and a million things throughout the state. Really wonderful initiatives. And she's also the parent of a child with special needs. And I think that really brings a valuable perspective to the processes that we're going to talk about today. I think that perspective is helpful. So that's who will speak first. Then we'll have Kathy Thomas. She's the Assistant Director of Acadiana Area Human Services District, formerly known, or maybe also known to a lot of us as OCDD, which is the Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. She handles a number of things for her organization. She handles family support, the Flexible Family Fund. She handles the entry program for AAHSD. And she is also the parent of a child with a disability and has worked for many years in the Lafayette community as an advocate for individuals with disabilities. And we have Crystal Romaine from Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. She'll be the final presenter today, and it's especially important at the high school level to have Ms. Romaine with us, because Louisiana Rehabilitation Services provides a number of things for adults with disabilities, and in many cases, she'll give more information about it, but high school students with disabilities as well, with a vocational component to it. And she also, for a number of years, has worked in the vocational rehabilitation area for individuals with disabilities, which we hold near and dear to us, of course, in the Lafayette Parish School System. We have our community skills program at the high school level, where students participate in a variety of things in the community, including vocational instruction. Finally, before I sign off and hand it over to the presenters, I'd like to thank our director, the Director of Special Education, Holly Ortego. She has really provided a lot of encouragement in this effort to get the word out, and really challenges us to be the best and do the best that we can and better every day in our service to our students. And I think she probably works 24 hours a day, thinking constantly about ways to better serve the students at the Lafayette Parish School System. So I wanted to highlight our appreciation of her, and of course, the superintendent of the Lafayette Parish School System, Francis Touchette, for his constant support for the special education program for the special education students of the Lafayette Parish School System. So I'll stop talking now, and I'm going to turn it over to Nicole Flores. She is going to talk about services available through Families Helping Families, and I encourage everyone online to make a note of the contact information for these agencies. And I'll say one more final thing, and it's something that a lot of supervisors say in meetings. You know, if you take away, a big takeaway of today is take note of the phone numbers and the contact information for these agencies. Call them and tell them, my child is in special education in the Lafayette Parish School System. What services can you provide for me? What is available? And give them time to give you the information. In other words, don't turn anything down. Find out what is available and go through the process. I really encourage that. Call, call, call. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Flores.
I think it's a good crowd. I'll just go with what I have.
I'm not leaving.
Hang out here with me. It's all good.
You just press the space button.
Space bar does it? Okay. Well, thank you. My name's Nicole Flores. I'm the director of Families Helping Families of Acadiana. And like Ellen mentioned, I'm also, the most important thing, my daughter is a student in Lafayette Parish receiving special education services. So just to tell you a little bit about Families Helping Families of Acadiana and the whole network, because we're here to help like someone helped us in the past. All of us at Families Helping Families either have a disability and or have a child with a disability. So you'll see on our sign, it's not just, you know, a job, it's who we are, it's what we do. So just a little bit about how I came to Families Helping Families. My daughter was born at 26 weeks. She stayed in the hospital in the NICU for about 108 days. And we went through early steps, and we had help, and then we went into and got special education services. Well, we didn't know who to ask or where to go when she got out of the hospital about getting other services. So we didn't have anything besides special education until she was 13. So that's when I found out about Families Helping Families, and I went there to get help, and that led to me being able to get her the waiver, some other things you'll talk about, and to be able to get the help she needs as we move forward. So what we're doing is about helping someone just like someone helped me. So this was back in the day. She's now 18 years old, so we've gone through everything. The NICU stay, we've gone through early steps, all the special education, and now we're going through transition, community-based trainings, everything, and getting ready to get her out there in the world. So that's my Lillian. So a little bit about Families Helping Families. We are a family-directed resource center. We're basically a one-stop shop for people with disabilities and their families. There's 10 of us across the state, and what happened was prior to 1989, if your child had a disability or you're an adult with a developmental disability, you had to go and be sent away for help. You couldn't stay home and get services. They basically sent you to like institutions. Well, in 1989, they had a conference. And the Developmental Disabilities Council held the conference, and parents talked about, hey, this is what they're doing in this state. You know, this is what they're doing in this other state where we can get services and our families can stay home. We can stay right at home and get everything we need. Conference is ending, and a parent goes, well, these are great ideas. Are we just going to leave them up on the wall? So that led to Act 378, which created the home and community-based family support system, like waivers. It also created the Families Helping Families Network. There's one of them in each LDH region across the state. So Acadiana, FHF Acadiana, we serve Region 4. So we serve Acadia, Evangeline, Iberia, Lafayette, St. Landry, St. Martin, and Vermilion parishes. So if you move or you're somewhere in the state other than Acadiana, there's going to be a FHF there to help you. So this is a little dated. We actually got started in 1991, and we've been around to this day helping families. Like I mentioned, we're a network of 10 centers. We're a nonprofit agency. There's one in each OCDD region. We're a one-stop shop, and the big thing is we believe that individuals with disabilities deserve a meaningful life in the community. So a little bit about how the FHF centers operate. We're all nonprofits. We build our program based on the needs of our own region. So it's basically helping people with disabilities. What do we need in the region we serve? Some of our partnerships and programs that we have are Early Steps. We have partnerships with the Bureau of Family Health, the Department of Education, OCDD, Acadiana area. F2F HIC, we have the Youth Leadership Program, and we also have a parent-to-parent program. We're a nonprofit. We don't charge anything for any services, and we just want to be here to help families. Like I said, somebody helped us before. The funding for the centers, just to explain, common funding are things like from the disability, the DD Council, Department of Ed, Department of Health, and then certain centers might have specific funding based on their needs. Just a little bit about Region 4. You can see a map where all the centers are and the areas that we serve. The main three things that all of the FHF centers do are peer-to-peer support, because like I mentioned, we're a family-directed resource center. It's different when you go to a doctor and the doctor says, this is the diagnosis, take this medicine, for whatever, your child might have, versus you go to another parent who's been through it and can kind of walk that walk with you. So peer-to-peer support is one of the biggest things. Education and training, and then information, resources, and outreach, just like this today. Connecting people to resources so they get the help they need, just like we got the help from someone before. Like I mentioned, peer-to-peer support is one of the biggest. We have a trained staff, people that care and have been through it. We have people with lived experience. This encourages others. This also includes professionals so that we can help everyone who is around the person with the disability to make sure they get the resources they need. We have a lot of education and training. We'll have webinars, disability-specific topics, conferences. We'll go to IEP meetings. A big thing is meeting with parents and going over their rights and responsibilities so they can help teach their children how to advocate for themselves. Then, of course, the information, resources, and outreach. We want to make sure we have up-to-date resources. We have newsletters, websites, and we're always looking to connect with families that we can help, just like events like this. So going through some of the programs we have a grant, we have a contract with the Developmental Disabilities Council, and they engage in advocacy, systems change, and capacity building to make sure that people with developmental disabilities can have self-determination and be included and productive in all aspects of their life. We have the Louisiana Youth Leadership Forum. This is a leadership advocacy camp we have each summer for 10th to 12th graders with disabilities. This year it's going to be held on the campus at LSUE. Every presenter should be somebody with a disability or lived experience. We go to the Capitol, we learn about disability history and pride. We go and debate a mock bill. And then, of course, we have fun things like the talent show and the dance and things like that. But it's bringing together our delegates or students with disabilities to show them, here's adults who have disability as well, and this is what they're doing with their lives because you can do it too. Of course, I'm not going to go too much into Acadiana area as they'll be speaking as well. They are there to provide access to people with behavioral health and developmental disabilities to make sure they have community-based services while promoting wellness, recovery, and independence. So I'll gloss over that so Kathy can cover that in detail later. Louisiana Family to Family Health Information Center. If you have someone from birth to age 26 and they need help with the healthcare process and navigating healthcare systems, we can connect you to Bayou Land Families Helping Families, and they can help you navigate that whole process. We also have our community outreach specialist for Early Steps, which is the state's early intervention program. And they work to help refer people who have children with disabilities from birth to age 3. My daughter went through Early Steps because early intervention is key. I think she had every service known to man, but it made a big difference, and she was ready when she was able to get ready to go into pre-K 3. We also have a partnership with the Bureau of Family Health, where we support families with children and youth with special health care needs. This is about connecting them to resources and then connecting the providers to the families and to us. This kind of sounds, oh, there's a lot of state agencies listed, this is a lot of words, what you're saying. Basically, if somebody calls our office and it's anything to do with disability, we take a look at our different programs and see what resources we can provide them, other organizations we can connect them to make sure they get the help they need. And all of that, the big piece is the peer-to-peer support, because they're talking to somebody who has kind of been in their shoes before. Of course, we also have our contract with the Department of Education. We serve all of the parishes. We have one-on-one trainings, we do workshops, we go to conferences. We do a lot of one-on-one case conferences. Parents will bring in their IEPs, we'll go through it with them and say, what are your concerns? How can we help you work with the school system to make sure you know what's going on and the student is getting what they need? So the goal for that is to make sure that we're promoting inclusive education and that our students are getting FAPE. We also have LACAN, which is the Council's Advocacy Network. This is where you can participate in grassroots advocacy if you're interested in learning what's going on at the state, things that are going through the legislation, things that are related that'll impact you or anyone with disabilities. You can sign up for free through LACAN, and they'll send you alerts and help you advocate for things to make systematic change at the state level. We have an adult program coordinator, some of you know him as well. He coordinates activities for adults with or without disabilities and works to help people learn about self-advocacy. We also have a program, Parent to Parent USA, where we train volunteer support parents. Let's say you call in and your child is newly diagnosed with narcolepsy and you speak Spanish and you want to be connected to someone that meets those same criteria. Well, if we don't have a trained support parent that can meet with you and talk to you like that, we can contact the national network. So you can get support one-on-one from somebody that meets your language needs, communication needs, and the disability or circumstances of the child, that matches you. So you can talk to somebody who's been through it before and help you get to where you need to be. We also have a lending library at our office over on Cameron. We have books, videos, even DVDs that can be checked out. And then our contact information, we're over at 100 Binman Road. It's basically on off of Cameron Street down near Scott. You can reach us at 337-984-3458. And our web address is www.fhfacadiana.org. So a lot of this is a lot of high-level information. Basically, we want parents or anybody with a disability, if you need help or resources, they can contact us and we can figure out how can we help just like someone helped us before so you can find what you need. So that's the broad overview. So I wanted to see what questions anyone might have. Okay?
You said you'll have professionals. What professionals do you have on staff to help families with?
Well, we have our peer support specialist. Our education liaisons also can assist as well. We have 2 of those. And our outreach specialist. So we don't provide things like counseling or things like that. It's going to be peer-to-peer support or helping find the information or resources you need, or going through and providing workshops, trainings, things you might need to gain that information or the education you need moving forward. Ellen?
It sounds like, I think of a lot of circumstances where someone might call. So say an overwhelmed parent or a situation where there may be some urgency or crises. If they called your line and just said, a lot going on, would y'all take them in and guide them to say, reach out for services? if they
Definitely,
have them?
and that's typically what happens. People find us basically like when the house is on fire. Like we'll have people call in and then they're saying something like, I'm having issues at school, with the IEP, but then we find out they're living in their car. So helping them figure out, this is what you called for, but you have more emergent, urgent needs. Let's help you kind of prioritize and help them talk through it and figure out and plan those next steps. A lot of times that's what's happening. They call for one thing, most of the time it's education questions, but then we find out all the other things they didn't even know to ask.
What services are available to the families and the students after they transition out of secondary school?
Well, after secondary school, well, we don't provide like a service like that, but let's say that, like my daughter's graduating next year. So we help parents figure out, well, what are you looking at after high school? And it's so many different things. In my daughter's case, we're going to be looking at like things like day programs, the quad, things like that. But for other people, it might be, hey, I may not be going to UL, but maybe I want to go to a post-secondary like Bridges or UL Life or something like that. We can help them learn more information about that and connect them to those schools. Or it might be, hey, I just want to, get a job or have supported employment. And we can connect them to other agencies, a lot of times, Acadiana area, LRS, to see what do they qualify for and, what the next step might be.
So for the most part, y'all focus on when they're in school?
No, we, life, everything.
Okay.
Birth all the way through, anything disability related. It used to be primarily developmental disabilities, but it's everything disability. So, and if it's something we don't particularly handle, maybe it's not in our wheelhouse, we still make sure we find, help them wherever they need to go for that resource. Chris?
You mentioned IEPs. Does your organization provide like advocates that can?
Yes, typically we would ask parents to call in and we would set up like a one-on-one conference to go through all of their concerns and then to see, go through the IEP and make a plan. We do attend like IEP meetings. We have to kind of prioritize that. We have 2 liaisons, so we need to make sure we have adequate notice and be able to meet with the parent and prepare them before we would go to a meeting.
Wait, one more.
Kristen?
Okay, so if someone were to say they're a parent, they've been through a journey, and they want to help your parent-to-parent program, how could someone be involved in that?
I will actually be having additional trainings later this year where we will provide the training on being a volunteer support parent. And basically it's learning how to be a peer-to-peer support. The parent-to-parent program basically is we train people that they can support others. But if they have someone that's referred to them and they want to help, it's 4 contacts over 8 weeks. So it's not a huge commitment. It's just something else to connect people together. That's all I had. So I think, hand it off and Kathy will be next. Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
You made it easy.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's a lot of good information. And then, we keep saying over and over the contact numbers to call them and let them know that you need information. And it sounds like y'all will direct them exactly where they need to go. The next, I'm going to hold that right there for now. The next speaker will be Kathy Thomas from AAHSD, Acadiana Area Human Services District, AKA OCDD, sort of. But another phone number, I'm going to hand her the mic and I'll pull up their contact information so that that's on the screen while she's talking.
Okay, I think I'm going to make that my first point. So Acadiana Area Human Service District is who I work for. I'm Assistant Director of Services there developmental disability services. Acadiana area actually has two different divisions. There's one side that focuses on mental health, and then there's one side that focuses on developmental disabilities. So Tyler Mental Health is also within that facility. The first question I always get is, people don't understand, why aren't y'all OCDD anymore? What's going on with these things? So we still run all of the programs through OCDD, through the Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities, such as waiver. What happened was, we are now a local government entity, and they took all of the money and the funding and they broke it into parishes, so that each parish had, or parish districts, so that each region would have more control over their funding. So if everything were done exactly the same in the state, we would have to do things like New Orleans, and what works in New Orleans is not gonna work in rural Vermilion Parish or Lafayette Parish, you know, the outskirts in Scott, things like that. So all it was is, we're now a local government entity and we have more control over our funding. So we're still running the same programs, and it's still OCDD programming. So that's okay if people are still identifying us in that way. It's kind of the same programs. So the first thing I want to talk about is how you apply for services. All someone has to do to apply for services, if you have a child or a person in your life with a developmental disability, you call our office. We are the single point of entry, the SPO. All someone has to do is call and say that you want to see what services you qualify, you want to see if the individual you're looking for is in the system, and our workers are trained to take care of everything else. They're going to walk you through the process. They're going to make sure that each individual qualifies. They're going to let you know what it is you need, and it's going to be a super easy process. So just pick up the phone and give us a call. I would highly recommend that every single parent reaches out and makes sure that their individual is in our system as soon as possible. While your child is still in high school, you have all of the data. You can go and reach out to the teacher and get the IEP. You can reach out and get all of the evaluations that we need, and it's gonna make it a lot easier, even if you don't need services. As everybody mentioned, I have a son with autism. He's on the spectrum, and we've never really utilized we've never utilized our services, but let me tell you, I got that statement of approval as soon as possible, and his name is in the system, and I make sure to keep everything updated, because our system is your emergency services. Should something ever happen to me, I'm very lucky that my son can function at a pretty high level and he doesn't need as much right now, but whenever I die, these services will be in place to assist him, because he can't function on his own 100% without services. And so the point that I want to drive home to every single person is, make sure that the individual in your life is registered for services. Whether you need them or not, get their information in our system, because you never know when you're going to need us. It's a very simple process. We get the diagnostic information, because someone has to have a developmental disability, and then they have to have substantial functional limitations. So, on occasion, somebody may have cerebral palsy, but it doesn't affect them very much. So they're not going to qualify for services. It has to affect your life in some way, causing you to need the services. But we take care of all of that. You don't have to know much. We just need you to contact us, and we'll walk you through the rest of the process. So what services do we provide? We have early steps. We're connected with early steps. We trade information back and forth between early steps, and we will often work with even babies who are coming out of the hospital to provide services to the parents if the child needs services all the time. We have our entry unit, and the entry unit is the unit that qualifies and sees if the individual meets the definition for a developmental disability. And they're also extremely knowledgeable. The people in our entry unit, they don't just assess for, oh, do you qualify? They normally kind of get the baseline of the person. Also what Families Helping Families does. But we find out, you know, do you have an emergency in your home? Are you homeless? Are you having major issues? Is the mom not able to work because this individual has nowhere to go during the day? So they do a total assessment, and they also connect people to resources. We have the Flexible Family Fund. Individuals who qualify who were under the age of 18 can qualify for up to, it's $258 per month, and it's a grant that's given to families. You can do whatever you want with it. They don't ask any questions. It's just to support individuals who have developmental disabilities, because we know that their care is extraordinary. We have an individual family support program. That's one of the programs that I run, and it is a crisis program because we know that the needs of individuals could be all over the place. And so we will often get calls about families who have an individual with a developmental disability, and because of their extraordinary care, they maybe can't pay for electric bills, or they can't pay for their rent this month, or they have some sort of an extraordinary need. They may need respite services because the primary caregiver is going into the hospital. So it is a wide variety. We don't have, the guidelines are really loose that allow us to do whatever it is the family needs to make sure that the individual is safe and that all of their needs are met. So we have done everything from assisting with a hotel because a family lost everything in a fire. We have paid electric bills. We've bought communication devices for individuals who they're using a communication device in school. You can't have those over the summer, and they don't have the funding for it, so we've been able to buy those communication devices. It's extreme flexibility, and so if you have an unmet need, get in touch with us. If the person has a statement of approval, they qualify for that program. We have a supported living program, and so that would be, let's say you have an individual like my son who may be a little higher functioning. They can do most things on their own, but they may need someone to help them with the bills, or if they inherit a house, they may not understand that you have to pay taxes and you have to pay insurance. And so it's somebody who can kind of help guide them through the things that come up in life. And those curveballs is kind of what they're there for. We provide support coordination for those who qualify. So the support coordinator will serve as their social worker who should be answering all of their questions and the family needs, those types of things. That typically comes when the person is given a waiver offer. So of course we run the Medicaid waiver programs, and there are 4 different waivers that depend. There's a children's choice, supports waiver, row waiver, and a now waiver. I don't think I'm going to get into those specifics because it'll glass everyone over. Y'all don't need to know these things. But basically, if a family needs assistance in the house, they need a caregiver in their home, or if they're going to need home modifications, that's another thing that it's huge with our population. If you're living in a house and the doors aren't wide enough, or you have a child who is in a wheelchair and it's difficult to bathe them, we'll put in roll-in showers. We're able to do, home modifications, put in ramps, lift systems. We have a team of professionals who will go out and they'll assess the home and make the decisions as to what's needed. Physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, food therapist. We have a whole resource center that will go out and do assessments to figure out what's needed in the homes. The majority of those types of items are paid for through waiver. Family support can help with some of them, but 9 times out of 10, the waivers assist with those things. We do some school transition services. Troy and I and several other people will go into transition meetings to let families know, because it's really scary. You have a child who's transitioning out of school. Okay, how am I going to work? What am I going to do next? What is their life going to look like? And our agency will help to pay for those services. And some of the things that are offered to these families, we have day programs. There are about 4 in Lafayette, and there are several in other areas too, that offer a different variety of services. And it's one of those things where I feel like every family needs to go out and meet with each one of the day programs, because every individual needs something different and they all cater to different people. So we pay for those services. We can also pay for some employment opportunities. 9 times out of 10, if somebody really needs employment, and typical employment, it's gonna be LRS if they need services. If they need group employment, or if they need to just kind of start career exploration and they can't do it outside of a group without someone with them, our agency pays for it. But again, I don't need to get into the muddy details. Give us a call and we'll work that out. We have a really good relationship and we work it out between us. We also provide for those individuals who don't qualify for day program. Let's say they're, for some reason, like bedbound and they can't leave their home. We can provide the in-home support so that the families can continue to work. So when it comes down to it, unless they're going to be using LRS services, if they're needing those services after school, we're the agency that's going to pay for those. We're the state agency who's going to pay for them and give them those different supports. So again, there's the waiver services. We have some dental services that we assist with. That most of those now are through our family support program. If an individual receives waiver, they're getting dental services now, although not enough people are accepting it. But we do assist with dental issues because quite often the individuals we see need sedation dentistry or they need something very specific. And so if their waiver or their health insurance doesn't pay for it, they can come to us to see if we can assist with that. And that's kind of limited depending on the financial situation. Of course, we have an OCDD resource center. That's where someone can come out and do the assessments on your home to see what it is, what type of modifications you need. As the individuals that we're serving, as they get older and they get bigger, it's more difficult to bathe them, to get them in and out of the house, those kinds of things. So we go in and do those assessments. So the one thing I want everyone to take away from this is every single individual in special education or anyone with a special needs, they need to make sure they register with us and to do it sooner rather than later. I can't tell you how many times I get a phone call, Mom is ill, she's in hospice or having to go into a nursing home, and she has a 40 or 50-year-old child and they've never been in our system. Well, I have to, legally, I have to prove that they qualify. And I have to prove that this disability occurred before age 22. If I can't do that, I can't serve them. But if a parent has gotten me that information, if you got that for us in school, it stays in our system forever. We don't delete the information out of our system. And so a person who comes to us and the information is already there, it's easy. Oh, no, I have his IEP from whenever he was in school, no problem. He's definitely ours. We can jump into action, and I can use my family support money, and I can go in and help that family. If you're not in the system, I have to prove it. I legally can't use money on this family until I prove that this person qualifies. So I've got to dig for the information. I've got to see if I can find it. And there are some individuals, it's heartbreaking because we feel like they're ours and we wish we could jump into the situation, but the information's not in the system. So please, if you have a child with a disability, if you have a family member with a disability, if you're a person who has a developmental disability or you think you qualify, call us. Let us walk you through the system. I hope that your children never need services and they're able to be completely independent and they never need us, and I hope we've wasted your time. But if we haven't, and you need our services, it's going to go so much faster if they're already approved and in our system. And that's the big takeaway. Call us. As soon as this is over, give us a call. Have any questions?
I do.
What you got?
Okay, as part of the school system, a lot of times we go into IEPs, and sometimes the parents don't even know if they've qualified their child. So can we call and say, hey, this is so-and-so, is the kid on the waiver list, is the kid qualified? And if they're not, do you keep that also?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So if the parent is there with you, call me, put me on speakerphone. I'll give you my cell and Troy's cell and our office numbers.
Troy.
Call, okay, I'll give you mine before we leave. Call me. We'll look it up. If the parent's there with you, I can tell you who's in my system and who's not.
Okay.
And we'll go to IEPs too. Anytime you want us to. And if for some reason we can't, we'll Zoom in, or at least you can call us during the IEP if for some reason, we can't. But we do our very best. If a family wants us there, we want to be there and we want to advise them. I've gone so far as, on occasion, the families don't understand. They don't understand the services. I will come with my forms to the IEP, and we'll fill it out there. That way we get the information and we get them in the system, because it's a very simple process. And if I'm there at the IEP and you have documentation that they have the developmental disability, we can do it on the spot. So, yes, ma'am.
You mentioned home modifications.
Mhm.
What does somebody do if they need like a vehicle that has like a lift, or like a wheelchair accessible? Would they go through y'all to ask, or is that a different
Yeah.
department?
No, absolutely. We put lifts into vehicles if they qualify. Now, we don't ever buy vehicles, ever. We just don't have that kind of funds. I wish we did. So they have to have the vehicle, and they have to meet certain criteria. And we have to get an occupational therapist, or the physical therapist has to go out and do evaluations. So it's a process. It's not just a quick thing, we throw a lift into any vehicle. And it also depends on funding and funding sources. So I get my funds once a year. They have to be used on every emergency. If we find somebody who has been abused or they've, something horrible's happened to them, that's what the funding is used for. And so we have to kind of prioritize things. So sometimes things may have to wait until the end of a fiscal year, or we have to wait until we get more money. And it also depends, if you're in Lafayette where there's paratransit, you may have to wait a little while because it all comes down to dollars. But if we have the money and if they have waiver services, we can absolutely assist with that.
And you probably kind of answered this, but I'm thinking, coming off her question, I have a van and it's got a ramp, but it's not operational. I've been muscling her up.
Oh, no, call us. When we're done with this, call me when we're done. Yeah.
Because, and I think the closest place is, with the system that's put in, is Baton Rouge. But maybe y'all would know too, because I bought it with, it was already in there. So I don't know who.
We have vendors
Okay.
that we can deal with, and we price shop because we have to. We don't have much money.
Okay.
So give us a call after this, and yes, we can absolutely look into that.
I was just gonna give a little bit, whenever I first heard the word waiver, I just moved here from Texas not too long ago. Waiver, I just didn't understand but it means it waives the family's income. For anybody that doesn't know,
That's,
anyway.
yes.
I just wanna make sure that it made so much more sense whenever, because some people might have, the parents might both work, and yet they might not qualify for normal services, Medicaid services, but then the waiver programs help you get those services that you need with waiving the parents' income. They still qualify for things.
Absolutely. That's a very, very important point. There are two things. Number one, the services that we offer never cost the family anything, and she's absolutely correct. The waiver is there because it does waive the family's income. One program that I didn't talk about, I know we're doing high school right now, but there's also a program called Act 421, and Act 421 is huge. It is a program that allows a family to get Medicaid regardless of their income if they have a child who qualifies. So we realize that even though a family may make more money than you typically would in order to get Medicaid, the cost of having a child with a developmental disability can be extreme. And so there is now a way for those families to get Medicaid without looking at the family's income. And so if you're interested in those things, we can assist with applying. Our office does some work with that, like we help people qualify, but we are not the Medicaid office, but we can help walk you through that system. All right, thank you so much.
Right, Thank you. That's great information and a great point, too. I'm glad that that was made about qualifying for these services, and the income of the family is not a factor. It's based solely upon the disability of the child and their needs. And then really good information about the Act, what was it? 421. Okay. TEFRA, yeah. So TEFRA, TEFRA, Act 421. So another way to look at Medicaid, and you can get that help by calling the number that I took off the screen, but 262-5610, our area code. So next I'd like to introduce Crystal Romaine from Louisiana Rehabilitation Services, and this is an important component of the high school aspect of this because she's always involved during that final year of high school. We do have some information here today that when Ms. Romaine is done, I'll talk about that gives some guidance for that, for all the years, but specific guidance for the last year of high school. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I do have a little bit of a presentation that I can go through to give you some information about Louisiana Rehabilitation Services. We are a state agency, and we are housed under Louisiana Workforce Commission at this time. At different times, we've been housed under different departments, but presently we are under Workforce Commission. And we are one division, which is called Vocational Rehabilitation. A lot of people are familiar with the unemployment, workers' compensation. We are the Vocational Rehabilitation Department. Our mission statement is assisting persons with disabilities in their desires to obtain or maintain employment and or to achieve independence in their community by providing rehabilitation services and by working cooperatively with businesses and other community resources. So our mission we put people to work. We're definitely, everything has to be associated with work. Let me see if can you help me do the PowerPoint present?
I think, so I'll step up. I think it just came to me as a PDF.
Okay.
So so it's not, there's no presentation.
Well, I'll do this.
mode?
That's fine. Okay.
Scroll down. It's a touch screen too.
Thank you. Okay, so what is vocational rehabilitation? A lot of people do not know what the word vocational rehabilitation is. It is a rather, it's been around a while. It first started with injured soldiers in World War I. So we have been around, it was specifically developed with all of the soldiers coming back with injuries, having disabilities, and unable to support themselves. It's morphed a lot over time. A lot of people are familiar with the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That was major. Then even more recently, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was all of these acts put rules and regulations in place. We are a component of all of that because we have to do with work. We are the flagship program where one-stop career development is offered to individuals with disabilities. We have a wide range of services, and I'm going to go through the different services. It is rather complex because individuals with disabilities have specific needs, and every individual with a particular disability may not need the same thing as another person with the very same diagnosis. So it is very individualized. So we help, again, getting a job, keeping a job, or advancing in a job is our focus. So unlike Acadiana Human Services District, where you register and you're there forever and you want to get in there as early as possible, that's not the same for us. Ours is when you need the service at the time is when you come and you can bounce in and out of services. So we have people who will come, they have a need regarding their work at some point, and they achieve that goal, and then, as we have all done, they may want to go back and get some more education or another licensure, or they get a different job which has a different, maybe a work site modification is needed. So individuals can come in and out. It's not as difficult. It's not the same as coming in early. You want to come when you need the service. This is our map. We are pretty much the same as the map that was seen, with the exception of St. Mary. We also have St. Mary Parish added into our region. So the green region is the office that I am over, and we have rehabilitation counselors that work in the office to help facilitate services. Now, criteria for eligibility. I just wanted to go through that. It is something that we look at the moment. So to be eligible for vocational rehabilitation, an individual must have a physical or mental disability which constitutes or results in a substantial impediment to employment. So for us, we look at how the disability affects employment, the ability to gain employment, or the ability to keep employment. We also have to show that they can benefit from our services in terms of employment. So Ms. Kathy mentioned earlier that they have a work component. Their work component is maybe more focused on a group setting. It is called supported employment. Ours is called supported employment too, just to add confusion. But our supported employment, a person must be able to do it independently. There's the difference. They have to be able to work independently. And I will go through a little bit more information as we continue. And they must have to require multiple services. So that part is also important. Every once in a while, we come into someone who, in the midst of their case, we may even find them eligible, and something with their disability changes. And they may need to take a break for a while. They may need to have some surgeries or something like that. We may have to close the case at that moment because at that moment they're not ready, and then we would reopen the case. So they have to be able to benefit from the service. So a lot of people are concerned. They don't want their cases closed because they fear other agencies. You are kind of in there forever. We're not the same. We do have to close the case because we are under federal mandate. We get federal and state funding. So we can't just leave a case with nothing going on. Now, this slide is a little bit blurry. The intention is not for you to necessarily read all what's there, but just to give a visual about how our services go. As Ms. Kathy mentioned earlier, it is a process. The first step, just as they said though, is contacting our office. We want to focus on, as she mentioned, we're primarily the transition services, or with the school systems, we really are more heavily in the exit year. That's when we really want to step in and start talking about where the individual is thinking of going. We can help along with that. We do career counseling. We can purchase assessments if we need to. If someone just says, I really don't know, I really don't, we have this every once in a while. I did say I wanted to be a nurse assistant, but, I went that pathway, but I'm just figuring that I don't like it, but I don't know what else to do. That's where we could come in, because we ask young adults to decide when they're 12 what they want to be when they grow up. And as with all of us, you know, I'm not the ballerina that I thought I was going to be when I was a child. It changes, and that's okay. We're here to help figure that out. We have the ability, once someone's with us, to purchase evaluations where someone who is trained to look at assessments and interest and aptitudes and the labor market, because that's another important thing. There's plenty of educational opportunities out there without the jobs at the end of it. So we are there to help with looking at the labor market with where you plan on living. It doesn't benefit someone to commit a certain number of months or years to gain a degree in a career pathway that doesn't have a job in this area. So you're no more employable than you were before because there's no jobs. So that's where we come in. That's another benefit that we have. And if there's a takeaway from that, as a parent of a person with a disability, or I have children, anybody, pay attention to, just because there's an educational program out there does not necessarily mean it's required for the career pathway they're going. The way we vocational counselors approach things is, what are you thinking of doing? And then we look at the pathway to get there. Not everyone needs to go to college. That may not be the career pathway to do what they're doing. So we kind of look at where they're going, and then we guide them that way. But all of these arrows going backwards and forwards and here and there is kind of how our services work. I got a black screen up here. Okay, it came back. Thank you. So what services are available? I use puzzle pieces just to give a visual because we look at every component of a person's life, and that's why each individual has a different pathway. We look at the whole person and the environment they're in and what their plans are. We deliver the services based upon, okay, you've been writing IEPs, we write IPEs. So individual plans for employment. So we do write them, and it outlines what goal we're trying to achieve and what steps are going to be needed to achieve that goal. It combines the counselor's professional expertise with the needs and choices of the client, or participant is the new word we're using. It is developed after a thorough assessment and evaluation of the rehabilitation potential. So we have to have some reasonable background information to confirm that whatever pathway we're moving toward is one that's achievable. So that's why we do some evaluations. I do have a little, you'll see the little asterisk there that does say we also provide pre-employment transition services. I wanted to put that in there also. That's for school youth with disabilities, and we presume them to be eligible. As of this moment, we have just entered a cooperative agreement with the Lafayette Parish School Board, and they will be what's called a third-party provider, and it starts the next school year, so we're excited about that. It will be provided through the school system, so pre-employment services, we will be the funding agency of it, but it will be provided through the school system. So I wanted to mention that. So we do some limited services prior to exit, but it's a little bit, it's a kind of a narrow margin, and it will be provided through the school systems. So we follow the federal regulations, as I mentioned before. I mentioned pre-employment transition services. You may hear the term pre-ETS, because everybody likes to have acronyms. That's what pre-ETS stands for, is pre-employment transition services. That's the limited services that are available prior to exit. We tend to have an agreement with someone to provide it, but as it's coming around, this was the result of WIOA, and with that act came the need for us to collaborate better with the school systems and start earlier. So we spend a certain percentage of our budget on pre-employment services for youth with disabilities. Vocational guidance and career counseling is what I mentioned that we provide those services. Evaluation to examine the rehabilitation potential. So we have the ability to purchase evaluations, whether it be vocational, driving modification evaluations, things of that nature. Physical restoration and mental restoration, those are limited, but it's to help bridge the gap between maybe employment, insurance picking something up. And you will see some of the things are in green with asterisks. All of the things that are in green with asterisks are based upon income. Those that are not green and do not have an asterisk are not based upon income, so we don't even explore income. The rehab technology, which we do provide, which includes rehabilitation engineering, assistive technology services, that includes hearing aids, prosthetic limbs, orthotic devices, wheelchairs, vehicle modifications, which we spoke of earlier, home modifications, and also providing the training for those services if there's assistive technology recommended. And as you can see, only hearing aids is based upon income. All of the others are not. Occupational tools and equipment, self-explanatory, welding tools, auto mechanic tools, things of that nature. Transportation, as long as it's to facilitate the involvement of another service. So to school, things like that. We don't necessarily, once they get to work, we don't pick that up, but we will help them get to and from their training. Job placement into suitable employment. I do have an in-house placement specialist. She is available to assist with placement needs. As long as the person doesn't need a one-on-one coach, she's able to do that. If a person needs a coach, a job coach, we do have those services available, but we outsource those services to vendors that have developed with us. Maintenance is what, in some instances, we do help with housing, the room and board that is facilitated. We do have rules and regulations that go along with that. But it is something that is provided in some instances. Personal assistance services, we will pick up, a lot of times waiver services will provide those, and that's why we work very close and collaboratively with the Office of Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. But in some instances, they may get a limited number of hours, and we may be able to pick up some of those hours, the hours that are directly related to the preparation for the service that they're providing. Transition from school to work, which is what we're all about, making sure we get the students before they fully exit, so at least they know about us. A lot of times, the students in their exit year are so focused on just getting out and accomplishing that. But since we do take data now because of pre-employment services, I know that students are coming later. They may not come right away because they're focusing on graduating, and they remember later when the real life happens, and they're like, oh, wait, I met somebody in this meeting, and they were about work, and they give us a call. We're getting them later. So that the good news is don't be discouraged if they don't reach out to us right away. We're getting them later on. Sometimes they're just kind of focused on, I'm graduating, and I don't want to talk about more school or more work right now. And then blind and deaf-blind services for individuals who are low vision, blind, and dual sensory. We do provide what's disability and augmentative skills training, which we call DRAST for short, orientation and mobility training, Braille, home and personal management, and we also train for the Randolph Shepherd Business Enterprises, which are the vending stands you often see in courthouses or other state-owned buildings. We do the training so those individuals can facilitate and actually work and have the vending stand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about supported employment. We talked earlier, and I mentioned that OCDD also has supported employment. Their employment is more with a group individual where a supervisor is sort of always handy. What we work on is someone who is able, they would fall in our most significantly disabled category. Their disability is, we expect it to be ongoing, and we expect them to need a minimum of 2 visits a month for the duration of their job. So as long as someone is able to do that, we're able to work with them. Our vendors have to agree to continue providing that or to tap into if the person receives waivers. Sometimes we could coordinate benefits. Our services end and their services pick up to cover the twice a month or more if it's needed. So the important thing is we try to all work together to coordinate benefits. I did put a definition for integrated in there because that sort of is something that's really important with us. The person has to be able to work around where there's duties of other people. So a lot of the group environments that OCDD supports, the majority of the crew that the person is working on also has a disability. So that's what stands the difference between us. For us, the person would be out in the community on their own, and they would get 2 spot visits a month. So that's kind of the difference with us. We have employment. We have direct job placement. We offer work readiness, short-term job supports for those who need less support. I mentioned my in-house placement specialist. All vocational rehabilitation services are planned in order to prepare for get and keep a job, and we write it on our plan for employment. We have to be able to support the goal, and we do believe in a person having choice. They have choice, but there are some times where if we don't have the data to support it, we also can't move with them on that pathway. But that's okay. We accept that also. LRS will follow along for 90 days after a person achieves their goal employment, regardless of whatever service they're in. So even if we buy a prosthetic limb, or a lot of individuals who need to wear prosthesis, even their 20% deductible is incredibly high. So we could come in and pick up the 20% deductible, and that way they can keep working, because keeping a person working and paying taxes is always the way to go, for every reason. And successful employment is always our goal, and I mentioned that's achieving the goal and then staying on the job at least 90 days. We do partnerships with a ton of people, and this is not an all-inclusive list, but you will see some of the partners here. We work with substance abuse providers, drug court programs, DCFS, the early childhood. We work with the universities and colleges around the state. We have supported employment providers are the ones that I have listed here. Those are the supported employment providers. But we also have regular placement providers that don't do supported employment that are not listed here. And we work with also case management agencies. A lot of those are funded through Office for Citizens with Developmental Disabilities. So that's the social worker she mentioned earlier, or a case manager, to kind of help bridge the gap with pointing people in the right directions. What are our barriers? We do have financial need for some of the services, although right now it's pretty open. It's the most open it's been in a long time. I see our funding kind of starting to get smaller, so what I anticipate is the financial needs probably gonna get more restricted also. But there's only certain services that look at financial need. Limited service providers in some of our areas, especially the rural areas, we just don't have. We have the ability to provide it, we just don't have the vendors to do it. We don't have the resources. Rural parishes often don't have transportation, they often don't have childcare providers, and that's a problem for across the board. We can help fund it, but we have to be able to find the resources. The inability to do ongoing services, that's like medical care. Like someone who needs ongoing medication that's very expensive, or ongoing mental therapy that they have to do it in order to be successful. We can only provide short-term limited services. We try to link them with the appropriate providers, but there are some times where that does become a barrier. And there's a lot of misconceptions in the community just across the board about a person with a disability being able to become employed. So just all of our partners here are here to help spread that word and help people understand that everybody just has different abilities, and we just have to tap into those abilities. So we network with people, we teach empowerment to people with disabilities. We try to educate people, educate the community that people with disabilities can work. We try to be innovative and keep up with things as they come around. We look at other states very often, see what works, see what we can do with the funding that we have. And we try to work with advocacy to advocate to get the rules and regulations and actually more funding. The state of Louisiana sends back hundreds of thousands of dollars every year that we could tap into, and it's almost a 3-to-1 match. We send that money away, so that's sending 4 times the money away. And it's just, if we could just get that money, we could provide even better services. But the legislature just doesn't have the $1 to get the 4. And this is the contact information. Like I said, it doesn't have to be me. We have an office of counselors, and when a referral comes in, what I do is I do an assignment, if it's a person with a blindness or deafness, they go to a particular counselor. But other than that, we just rotate round robin. You will get a counselor. They will have you come in, and the process will begin. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Is it like Human Services District where you have to get into a database even before you need, or is it just when the person's finished high school?
It's when you're ready for the service. There's no database.
Okay. So
And it's each and every time, like if the person comes in and we say they get employment, we close them, but then they have a need later, they can come back again.
okay. So even if they take a year or two off after high school and don't need until they're
There's no timeline. As long as the person's interested and capable of working, that's our criteria, basically. And then they have to have a disability, but, and most of the time, most of the disabilities are evident. It's just a matter of gathering the information. Right now, we have a pretty lenient ability to use existing information. Unless it's a disability that would often change, then we would want to get something more recent. More so just for planning purposes, to make sure we're planning in the right direction. But we used to have strict criteria where it had to be less than a year old and things. They've taken all of that out. So it's a little bit, and very often if they've qualified through OCDD, we will write a consent form and try to get their evaluations, because we don't want to make a person go through an evaluation twice. If they have it available through the school system, the only problem we do run into is sometimes they've decided to waive their reevaluation, and so their assessments, like from when the person was like 8 or something. So we would want to get a more current assessment, because I know I'm not the way I was at 8 years old. You know, we would want to assess them as an adult, and we would pay for that. If we need it, if we decide we need it, we would cover that cost. So that would not be of any expense.
Another thing, I know a lot of people will say, oh, Mama said that if you get SSDI, you can't work. Do you help people understand that you
Yes.
can?
We actually have a benefits planning specialist on staff. She's with our state office, but we're lucky enough to have her housed in my office. So we can pop over to her all the time. Once a person's eligible for services with us, she can work with them. And that's just such an old wives' tale. You always come out better working. The check will be reduced in the most instances, and that's why we check, because there are some instances where the person's worked before and they're SSDI, so we want to make sure that that's correct. But most instances, the amount of money that's reduced, if you put the check you get plus the wages you get, you're way better off. And you're out and you're achieving independence, and it feels good to be able to do that. So we will always make sure. We definitely don't want somebody to harm themselves. And so the rules change, and the person we have on staff keeps up with those rules, even to the extent of like Section 8. Section 8 looks at your income. What's going to happen when that happens? Just food stamps. Will I lose food stamps? Just so they have a clear picture. But we also try to help them understand that it's to your benefit, even if the check is reduced. When you add all the income together, you're still way ahead. So we do have a benefits
I think
plan.
it's just an old wives' tale.
And it did use it a long time ago when I first started in the career. It was like that, and there was no expedited reinstatement. Now they have expedited reinstatement. They have things that Social Security has put into place to where if you do stop benefits because you're making way so much money, but something happens with your disability, you can get expedited reinstatement. So they have different things that she can talk to them about to kind of ease those fears, because it's a valid concern. It's very valid. Yes.
Do you do evaluations to see if a person is a good candidate to work?
Okay, that's a tough question. We do, but we do have people call every once in a while and say, I think I might have a learning disability, or I think I might have autism. We wouldn't evaluate for that to first diagnose a person, but if someone comes to us and they're determined and they're just, I really don't know what to do, or we talk to them and what they're saying, the career pathway they want to take is not very thought out, because we have that happen. They just pick a career because that's all they know about. We can purchase comprehensive vocational evaluations that will actually give us data, and we can get a report and go over it with them. It will go over, without training, what are some jobs you can do, with training, what are some jobs you could do. So yes, we do offer that once they're in our services if we need them.
And I wanted to chime in there on a couple of things that you said in that question. So if you're asking also about work readiness, so whether, not only whether someone has the skills or the ability to gain the skills going to school or those things, when they leave the school system, when they graduate, we complete something called a summary of performance, which we look back on their high school history. And the things that the classroom teachers have done and the things that the community-based teachers have done in our the vocational instruction component of our high school education. And there we provide information and opinions about work readiness. Even a term that people use is soft skills or those kinds of things. In our community skills program, they work on work endurance, not just the tasks of the job, but the, that kind of thing, which is really important. And then also we look at different types of jobs that might be appropriate for the student. So whether to work at a restaurant setting or a retail or all the other things out there, we try to investigate that as well. And together with the career assessments that they provide, I think give a really good picture. And then also I wanted to chime in also about the benefits, that the way that you expressed it was really so very good. We try to discuss that a lot as our students go through high school, letting the parents know that the benefits they're not impacted dollar for dollar, so that's not how it works. And like you said, their overall income can grow dramatically. And then they're in the workforce and they're, contributing to the overall community, which is a really satisfying thing. I want to, this is a lot of information that we've provided, I know that. And this recording will be provided to teachers and guidance counselors in the future. We hope to do that. We're going to do this again on the 24th. Parents have, we have sent out the flyers to parents. We're going to work hard on getting the word out there about that again for next Thursday. But it's a lot of information, but the takeaway also is, I think, the phone numbers, calling these people and telling them who you are and you need help, and then our connection with LRS while they're in high school and making those linkages as they finish high school. I wanted to thank also today, I thanked a few people. I want to thank Nicole Flores again, Kathy Thomas, Crystal Romaine, of course, Holly Artigo, and our superintendent, Francis Touchette, and also our special ed program supervisors at the high school level here, Roxanne Martin and John Babineau, for their engagement with our students at the high school level. So I think we'll have to wrap it up now. I feel like we could go on and on and on, but call those numbers and, don't hesitate and don't wait and don't wonder, because, the time is now. And, so we encourage that, and we'll continue to, through the school system, try different avenues to get this information out there as we go along. So thank you all so much for your time and attention today. Thank the presenters, and I think we got great information. Reach out if you have any questions, of course. The Lafayette Parish School System, 337-521-7000, and that'll get you to the main switchboard. Thank you so much.